So welcome to the podcast, the Crash Labs podcast. Today I have Jose Vizquerra, a friend of mine, joining us today, and we've known each other for quite a few years now.
It's been a while.
It's been a while, yeah. And you were an early supporter of Gold Spot when we went out public, which nobody was a supporter of. Like, it was a complicated thing that a lot of people didn't understand. And then we met and chatted, and then you got it and personally came into that. So extend a big warm thank you to you for early support.
I just have to thank you because I make money out of it. So it was
Okay,
mutually beneficial.
That's what I want to hear. That's good stuff. So anyway, yeah, very happy that you came on today and agreed to do this with me. And I know that you're a really busy guy these days and lots going on. So thanks again.
Well, there's always time for the friends, right?
Yeah,
so,
man.
We need to find that time.
Yeah.
And it's great to talk about mining, great to talk about stuff in general. And Goldspot was a phenomenal story, a story of breaking through, no? I mean, it was really out of the ordinary what you guys were able to build. And it paid back. At the end, you were disruptors in a sense, or in a big sense. And it was validated. I mean, in my opinion, took a long time to be validated. But man, it was a great thing with great discoveries.
Yeah,
more important.
Yeah, there's some pretty good discoveries in that story arc, and then part of it too was that it's like anything. When you start out, no one understands what you're doing, or it's hard for people to understand it, and then when you look back, everyone gets it, and then you've had some profound effect on the space. Like, there's all types of data science companies now. There's all types of machine learning groups out there that are doing it. And it's not something that's so unique and rare anymore. A lot of companies are using that in their regular workflow. You guys included, right? At O3. So, for the benefit of the listeners out there, I wanted to get a little bit into your life and sort of your foray into mining. Like, what brought you into mining?
Well, I was born and raised in Peru,
Mm-hmm.
and on my mother's side, my grandfather was in mining. He went into university initially to study civil engineering, and at that time, his grandfather's cousin, so he was the president of the country, Mr. Benavides. So his mom was they were cousins with his mom, and he was starting to be almost like bullied at university, saying, "Oh, you made it to university because of your grandfather, and that's why in civil engineering there's going to be a lot of work to be done, and roads and buildings and bridges, and you're gonna be so rich because of your uncle." And he was like, "I'm out." So he went into mining just as a rebel, put it that way.
Wow.
And then his dad said, "You want to do mining? Great. I'm going to send you for some training into Puno." Puno is in the middle of nowhere, south of Peru, over 4,000 meters over the sea level, and said, "Okay, you're going to be doing topography. You're going to be doing surveying. If you like it, maybe you should go into mining." So he did the 3 months. He had a blast. And he came back and said, "I want to do mining." So he went into mining. In 1952...
And this was your grandfather?
That was my grandfather,
okay.
Alberto Benavides de la Quintana. And he started Buenaventura, which is a public trading company today, listed in New York, in 1952. He rented a mine in a province called Huancavelica. Started with a Julcani mine that he rented. Subsequently, he bought the mine. And then he had a couple of discoveries, including Uchuchacua and Orcopampa. But the game changer really happened many years after. I mean, this is how suffering sometimes is mining. It happened in 1990 maybe, with the discovery of Yanacocha, which was as of today, the largest Latin American gold mine that was discovered, which has produced over 30 million ounces, I believe, today. And it was then a joint venture between Buenaventura, Newmont, and at the time, the BRGM, which was the Bank of Research from France. And subsequently, the Bank of Research sold the shares, and long story short, Buenaventura ended up being sole shareholder with Newmont, and recently sold their participation to Newmont. So 1996, Buenaventura went public in the New York Stock Exchange. Since then, they have never raised a dime, and it's a company that has been giving a lot of benefits to Peru. I mean,
it's a huge company too. What's the market cap of Buenaventura in London? I guess it's probably lower now.
In New York, it's around 2 billion.
2 billion.
2 billion US. In the best time in 2011, they were worth $9 billion.
That's a huge accomplishment. I mean, so did your grandfather survive long enough to see that legacy unfold?
He saw everything. He passed away when he was 93 years old. He really worked until the last day. Like 2 days before he passed away, he was thinking about what would be the railroad where they could bring all the ore from the Andes to the coast, and was proposing how is the trace of the railroad. Like, he was a passionate guy for mining, for the development of Peru. I actually believe in this idea that the more you do, the more you get, and I think he ended up being a very successful and certainly quite a wealthy guy. Because he never thought about making money. He thought about how to make progress in the country, how to make good. And as a consequence, things unrevealed in a very good way for him and now for our family. You know?
I think that's a very common theme when I look around at hyper successful people, when I look around at people that have these massive achievements. And if you get a chance to talk to them, people like your grandfather that would say that exact thing. You know, it wasn't the pursuit of money. It was the pursuit of like legacy. It was the pursuit of like making an impact and improving their environment or improving their country, or, just contributing to society. We all end up in the same place, and, that the end of our story is always the same, no matter who we are. Right. And it's like, what do you leave behind? And I think that motivates a lot of people that are hyper successful. They're more motivated by what they're going to what kind of mark are they going to leave in the history books, I
don't have any doubts about that.
Yeah.
I don't have any doubts. And I think the attestation to that was when he passed away, the amount of people that congregate for his funeral was huge.
Unbelievable.
I mean, from the president of the country to the most humble person arriving there to wanting to be part of that. That was incredible. Incredible as part of his family to feel this love for someone that did so much, and that in many cases he would never put his name.
Yeah.
In fact, I think part of the social issues that in a sense we have in the mining community was a little bit of that. Like, things would be done, but you would never say we did it.
Mm-hmm.
So then when the old NGOs or anti-mining people come into sight and they're saying, well, they have not done anything, because your name was not there, but the school was done by the mine, and the hospital was done by the mine, and the payroll was paid by the mine, and and then you have successful stories of people that started from nothing that are now very successful in the country because of that, which is amazing.
It's really strange to see, because that was my foray with Goldspot. Really, that was one of the places that we got a good kickstart, was with Ramon. Barua and Ignacio and Eduardo and the Hochschild guys, and when I went down there, I went to the Buenaventura office, thanks to your introduction. And it was just fascinating to see how many people, how close that community is, right? Like you guys are all friends.
Yes.
You guys are all like buddies and talking. I was talking to, another group there that they do they have the biggest like tin mines in the world.
The Brescia family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were all and everybody's friends. Like the everybody knows, oh, do you know Jose? Oh yeah, no, I talk to Jose all the time, or Ramon, or all these people. So it's pretty cool to see. And we were talking about this before the cameras turned on, but I want to bring it up because I think it's important. ESG. And, the Gold Council, and the way that gold and the way that mining and the way that it's being presented to the broader market, and the perception people have is so negative. And I was, talking about this actually the other day, was, I had just got back from Newfoundland, and this is nowhere close to what your grandfather must have felt, or like at all, like not even, a drop in the bucket. But when I went back to Newfoundland for the Minex conference last weekend, the number of people that I remember in that little town of Gander and the broader community, even in Newfoundland, I've seen lives being so positively impacted by, it's not even mining, it's at this point exploration, but there's an exploration boom there. And to see whether it's the restaurant owners or the catering companies or the hotels in the area or the taxi cab companies or the drilling, the list goes on. But, regular people with their kids in school, and the schools are all looking amazing and brand new. And like, you can really just feel there's a real connection with the people and the love for industry and for what it can bring to a community. And Peru must be, being such a prolific mining jurisdiction and having had such a good run of, uplift the number of people that have been pulled out of poverty because of high paying jobs and stability and the communities that benefit from it. And I don't think there's a real measure for that in the ESG world. Like, we talk about First Nations groups and are they being treated fairly? And we talk about a lot of these things or environmental footprint or carbon footprints and things like that. But how do you take the temperature of an entire community and all of its derivatives, all of these, small people, let's say, that tangentially benefit from? And I don't think we're doing that. I don't think it's going to happen.
No, and probably that's something on where we have to work. No, I mean, what is this extension of the mine? What are the third parties that are going to be part of the solution? As we were talking before, we need to start seeing mining as a productive sector that benefits not only by producing a commodity, but by producing a commodity that otherwise would be produced by bad people.
Right.
I mean, there is no easier way to laundry money than with gold.
Yeah, the mining business.
And that is the issue we have in Latin America, in the Caribbean, in Africa, not as much in Canada and the US, but we have a duty as mining guys to do proper mining.
Yeah.
And we're not getting any credits for that. Like, this is the same, no difference from comparing diamonds being extracted in a proper way or blood diamonds.
That's a very good point.
It's the same story.
Yeah.
So,
and that's not being measured either.
It's not being measured. And we have not been doing a good job either. And I truly believe that that's the duty of the of the Gold Consulate.
Mm-hmm.
They receive plenty of money from mining companies, and I don't see any comments with regards that we do proper mining, that this is good gold, not blood gold, that we contribute to society, how many schools has been built by mining companies. Remember one thing, we as geologists know that you don't choose where you're going to find the mines.
No.
And in general terms, they are pretty far from any area that has infrastructure.
Yeah, like they're not next to the big metropolis. They're not next to Lima, Peru or anything.
No, absolutely no. Yeah. I mean, they're in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the Andes, 4,000 meters over the sea level, if it's not even higher.
Yep.
Yet you are part of the solution, for example, with water. Where there is no water, you bring water. Mm-hmm. Where the water is already being naturally contaminated, because that's another part that we tend to forget. There is a lot of acidic water that we have in many areas in the world.
Yep.
And of course, now anyone that wants to do damage would go there and say, "Oh, this was, contaminated by the mine." That's not true. It was there already acidic from the mafic rocks that were there.
Yeah, from Mother Nature.
But yet you are able to, be part of the solution and change the pH of the water and give it back to the community. Or, for example, in the case of Arequipa, in the southern part of Peru, Cerro Verde, which is major shareholder Freeport, they turned the sewage into proper water for agriculture. That water was lost.
That's incredible.
And now it's being changed dramatically. We cannot even measure the impact of that. But yet, we as a mining community need to do a better job. First, not to fight amongst us, like not to point fingers. That's the first thing we have to do. We need to start working as a team.
Yep.
Because the benefit at the end is for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Second, we have to show the benefits of what we do, not only on producing the commodity, but what we're doing for the society. And thirdly, being able to show the society that this is an industry that people should be investing, because this is part, again, of the solution.
Yep. Yeah, very much. I mean, it's an industry that's not going away, and if anything, if you look at like the last 50 years and how much better we've gotten at doing this, and how much more efficient it is. It's like even coal. I mean, not to bring it up in the same sort of conversation, but if you look at like thermal coal plants, when they were closed, when they were mired in the last let's say 10 years, the thermal coal plants of today are not at all like the thermal coal plants of the 1970s or the thermal coal plants of, the 1950s. Like, it's not even close. The cleanliness, the efficiency. I mean, look at our gasoline cars, It would have been unthinkable to drive an SUV on, a full tank of gasoline for 600 or 700 kilometers with a 4-cylinder engine. 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I mean, it's incredible what technology can do and how much more efficient we are at it. And mining is no different.
Well, and the other thing is we need to keep people honest. What I mean by that is, for how many years Germany was, throwing garbage to everyone with regards to oil and uranium. Yep. We're not gonna have nuclear plants. Like we're not producing oil. Yeah, of course you were not producing it. You were using it.
Yeah, and you're buying the dirtiest shit you can buy.
And now when things get difficult, now suddenly uranium plants are okay. Nuclear plants are okay.
Coal's like, okay again.
Guys, I mean, let's keep things honest here. Yeah. We're not saying that some guys are not doing a good job. They have to be fiscalized, and if they're not doing a good job, they should be penalized.
Yeah.
But there should be also rewarded those ones that are doing a proper job.
Totally.
And again, mining is part of the solution. I think that is something that we need to keep insisting with our own viewers, with our own investors, because there is nothing better than out of this podcast we could have people that didn't know about mining, or if they knew about mining, that they keep talking about mining in a positive way.
Yeah.
Because that's what is going to change our industry, really, in a very big way. I mean, we keep talking about Google and Apple and all these things. All these companies need chips. All the chips are mostly used. We use gold and we use silver.
Yeah.
Because at the end, we cannot forget that they are the best superconductors. I mean, why do we use copper? It's because it was the third best, and it was cheaper.
A lot more of it. Yeah,
it was cheaper.
Yeah, exactly.
But gold will be used more, and if forever. Like one thing that we have to have in mind is that gold still being a currency. Of course, now we live in Canada, so you have the Canadian dollar or the US dollar. You have this paper. But if we were in the middle of nowhere, and you would have to cross a border, and you don't have a paper of anything, how are you going to pay? And the reality is that you would probably take out your gold chain and say, like, here it is.
Here it is, yeah.
So
if you're under real world stress, you'd be like, this, take this.
I mean, why under real world stress gold always goes up?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean,
it's been there forever, and it'll continue to be there forever. Like, there will be people that will take a shiny piece of gold if you don't have a basket full of cabbages to offer as a barter for whatever you're doing, or food or any other good or service. You could always say, here, take this, and they would probably take it. I mean, that's been true for thousands of
it's a currency.
Years,
right? And it matches the third principles of a currency. You can exchange it, you have a real value, and it can move from one side to another. You put a value immediately. So I do think that we as an industry need to do a better job on two things, and this is a freebie for the Gold Council. One, talk about how much benefit we're creating and the good job that we're doing
in the communities.
On communities.
Yeah.
2, let's make the difference between good gold and bad gold.
Yep.
And again, we're part of the solution. And 3, gold's still a currency. Yes, you can go as sophisticated as talking, and you need in your portfolio to have X amount of gold. Yes. How many people really understands that they even have a portfolio?
Yeah.
Not
in today's day and age,
not everyone,
less.
Not everyone.
Yeah.
And if we think about the younger generations, they're just thinking about what are the stocks they have, but they don't even know that's a portfolio.
Yeah.
So we're talking with difficult words to a generation that was born with wealth, and that is part of the problem. You know, in difficult times, the generation that came after the war, they were a very strong generation. They created a lot of wealth. Now we're coming to a generation that there was a lot of wealth before, so they are very lax, and they are very weak in a sense.
Yeah, well, it also has to do too, I think, with the time horizons, right? Like we're living in a fast-paced environment now where people have their little cell phones and they get their little shot of dopamine from their Facebook likes and their LinkedIn posts and whatever that gets them off. But we've got all these little zip of dopamine that's coming in from everything. You get an alert or a like on a message or something like this, and there's all this instant gratification, almost overwhelming amount of dopamine. Little shots that come off all day long. And, I think that's why the cryptocurrency thing was so appealing to so many, was because the time horizon to invest in it was so short.
It's immediate.
You could be like, boom, I'm buying it, and boom, the next day it's up 300% and I'm going to sell it. And they were getting that kind of, that volatility was there. And I think like with gold, there's a certain amount of volatility that's amazing in a positive and a negative way, but by and large, positive. If you look at a long-term time horizon, you could literally step into, you're never going to really lose at this game, in the gold game. If you were like, I was talking to Eric the other day. When we were on our way to Newfoundland. And one of the things I noticed with him, and I'm going to have him on here too to talk, but one of the things I noticed with him is how unbelievably long, like how macro his vision is on gold and what his fundamental investment thesis is really anchored in. And it's just such a long time horizon. He's so long, and what you're talking about is these are long things. And so that's going to be a challenge, because we've got to you're trying to almost rewire people that are used to this like shot of dopamine, this quick trade, to say, you know what, if I shovel off, that 10% or 20% of my net worth into gold in the long term, you're going to win. You're going to do very well. It outperforms just about every single asset class.
Absolutely. And not only that, it's really cyclical. So that's why you need to be long, and you need to know when to come in and go out. And it has been through history since the biggest depression in the 1900s, where you have the increase in interest rates, because that's the way that any government can try to control inflation until they can't.
Yep.
And then they have to drop the interest rates. As
Print
part
money.
of that, gold price goes up again. If we look at these charts, like we will see that right now we are probably at the cusp on interest rates going up, and they're going to start coming down. What will happen? Gold would rally in a way that we probably haven't seen since the 2009s or 10s.
Yeah.
And that will be very interesting. So these guys, the point is the Lasson, the Eric Sprott, the Seymour Schulich, all these very bright guys were bright because they are all very big readers. They all like history.
They're into it.
And in some cases, they are lucky enough that they have so much experience, they're older than us, that have seen these repeated so many times.
Totally.
That, you missed one, but the second one, you're not going to miss it again.
Yeah.
Like we have lived already one cycle, maybe two if we remember.
Yeah.
They have at least 5.
Yeah.
Or 3 or 4.
Or 3 or 4. Yeah, exactly.
So experience makes a very big difference.
A very big difference, and I think, but it's going to be an uphill. It's going to be an uphill climb, I think, to try to convince people. But they will come, and the important thing is that when they do come, that there's conversations like this one that they can listen to and may hopefully learn something from. This podcast is a source of information, perhaps. whatever have you, that they can go back and get educated and get up the curve a little quicker. So that's,
in a sense, it's our way to contribute. No?
Yeah, for sure. Totally. So just to go back to your personal history a bit, and I've got some questions for you because I want to jump into a couple things. So you had your grandfather built Buenaventura since the 50s, huge company. And so what happened with you? Like, you grew up under this, your uncles, your mom, your dad, like how did that, everybody was in the business? Was it a family business?
Everyone were at the business at some point, more or less. My grandfather had 5 siblings. From those 5, 3 of them worked directly into the mining industry. One of them, my aunt Blanca's husband, worked in the industry, so that's number 4. Number 5 was my uncle Alberto. He was a philosopher.
Yep.
And he never worked in the industry, but he did work tangentially in the sense that he did a lot of educational work with the different mines on the education side of things. My mom was the CEO of the zinc division at some point. Then she left the business, and my 2 uncles are still involved with Buenaventura, the younger ones, Roque as a chairman and Raúl as a board member. In my case, I did civil engineering in Peru, started working with the family, came to do my master's into Canada at Queen's in mineral exploration. And I think that experience was so hard in terms of, picking up certainly, like, I didn't know much about geology. That's the reality. So, I mean, it was a different science that I had to learn, and I put so much effort. I said, well, am I really good at this? Or I'm just going to go back to my family and work with them. So I decided it was PDAC, I remember, and I went with this card that says, master students in preparation or something like that. So I started handling my cards, and one of the geos from Goldcorp at the Red Lake Gold Mine saw that and asked me if I wanted to work with them.
Who is that?
It was Ron Sinskowicz.
Okay.
At the Red Lake Gold Mine.
Yep.
So I got an offer from them, and then I told my family, listen, I want to test myself and see if I can actually do this or not. So I spent 3 years in Red Lake.
So we have that in common, because I was in Red Lake too.
Yeah. So I was
Chris Oshowi and Nick Salazzi and those guys.
Precisely. Yeah, Chris Oshowi was my boss on the exploration side at some point. So I spent there 3 years as an underground miner, or underground as a bit geologist, really. And then I moved to exploration. Then I went back to work with my family in 2008. And in 2011, a friend of ours from the times of Peru came back and asked me for lunch. His name is Ruben Padilla. And Ruben was part of one of the most successful geological groups called, at the time, was Anglo Ashanti. They worked in Peru. They had 3 discoveries. And then they moved to Colombia and started exploration from zero. And there was these 4 guys, Ruben Padilla, Terry Harbord, Robert Shaw, and Chris Lauder, who was he was the one managing the team.
Ah, okay.
And they came up with the discovery of La Colosa and Gramalote and a bunch of discoveries there. And in fact, now part of Ari Sussman's company, I think they were part of that discovery as well. I think
the Talisker,
Chris, so it's a Talisker group,
the Talisker group,
So in any case, they came. Ruben asked me for a meeting. Said, "Well, we just left Anglo Ashanti. We started working with the Osisko group, which at the time I didn't know. Now, of course, I work with the Osisko group, so I know them very well. But he said, we're starting these 2, private companies. Would you like to come and be the president CEO?" My first reaction was, I don't have an MBA.
Yeah.
Because when I went back to Peru, I started working with my uncle Raúl, and I started doing kind of okay. And I started feeling, well, I want more. I said, I want to be vice president. I don't want to be the head of business development. And he said, well, you need to do an MBA and make sure it's in an Ivy League school, because we don't want to tell anyone that you are being promoted just because you are part of the family. And during that context is that Chris looked for me. And that's why I answered to him like, I don't have an MBA. But long story short, I started working then with the Osisko Group on these 2 private companies, Breval Oban, that we took public in 2012. And subsequent to that was, I guess, the beginning, after a bunch of difficult times, almost bankrupt after a kidnap that we have in Colombia. We recreated the company, we merged them both, we bought companies, and that was a recreation of Osisko, let's say version 2, together with John Brzezinski. And then we bought a bunch of projects in the middle in order to have critical mass. And segue to that, we spun everything out of Osisko that was not Windfall.
Yep.
Which has been a great discovery, by the way. And now we have O3, which is what I run.
You guys went out and mopped up a lot of stuff. You had like the Garson stuff in Ontario, which is now in Moneta.
Yes.
You had, which Greg Matheson was very close to, my buddy Greg, that is now running Newfound Gold stuff. He was, the guy at VPX for that. When you guys took that over with Oban, and originally I think he stayed on with you guys with Oban.
Yeah.
And then after the Osisko kind of division, it was like decisions need to be made.
Yeah.
So that's crazy. So, well, it'll maybe for entertainment purposes, what happened with, or not, what happened with the kidnapping? What was that about? You mentioned that and kind of grazed over, but I think listeners would go, kidnapping, Denny. Don't let him get away with that without diving into that a little bit.
So in 2012, in 2011, we started doing exploration in the south of Bolivar, which is on the northern side of Colombia, a couple of hours from Bucaramanga. And we started doing a very good job. We had a great discovery. We took the company public 26th of December of 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And on the 18th of January of, 2012, 18th of January of 2013, we had like 45 terrorists essentially coming onto the camp.
Holy shit!
Asking for the Peruvian Jose. But at the time, I had an issue with.
So they were looking for you.
Yeah, I had an issue with my permanent resident card, so I couldn't fly. And unfortunately, I actually hired a Peruvian from Peru to help us on the underground sampling. So the poor guy was.
And his name was Jose too?
Yeah, so they took these 6 guys, including our VP of Exploration, Gernot Wober, which now is with Discovery Metals, or Discovery Silver. And we spent, the first 2 months, we took the 5 people liberated, and Gernot stayed there for until the 27th of August of 2013, was almost 8 months. Yeah. So
Peruvian Jose.
No, Gernot. There were 5 guys. So it was Batista, which was our social guy. It was Gernot Wober, our VP Exploration. It was the Peruvian Jose, another Peruvian, and one of the guys from the community. Those were the 5 guys. The only one that stayed over 2 months was Gernot.
Holy shit!
So the company went from $50 million to literally 3. We kept cash. We kept $10 million in cash. In the middle, the very difficult part was that...
What happened with these guys? Were they like abused? Were they okay?
They were okay. In general terms, I would say that they were okay. They were not abused. It was a very difficult time politically around the world, because if you remember that time, 2013, Santos, the president of Colombia, was trying to reach peace with las FARC.
With the FARC.
Which was the second largest terrorist group in Colombia.
They were the communist group, right?
They're both, more or less. They're both extremely left.
Yeah.
And ELN wanted to be part of those peace talks. So they were using Gernot as a negotiation tool with the Colombian government / the Canadian government to let Gernot leave if they enter into the peace talks.
Holy crap.
So it was getting very, very bad. And at some point with our board, we just said, well, and they were making it very political, the properties that we had in Colombia, that we negotiated them with the communities.
Mm-hmm.
So they were saying that we took advantage, that we were the bad guys.
Sure.
Far from true. But at some point, we just said, listen, if we want to keep moving here, we want to direct our strategy, and we're going to make like a very difficult decision here that could mean that we are right or wrong, but most important is our people.
Yeah.
So we decided to went public. We put a press release saying we're dropping all the claims. We're dropping all the agreements we have. So at that point, politically, the ELN didn't have more to say.
They didn't have leverage anymore.
There was no more narrative in that regard.
Yeah.
And And I think that's what really at the end allowed us to get Gernot back.
Did you feel powerless during that process?
Horrifying.
And what do? Do you just call up the consulate and say, guys, we need your help? And how did the federal government help out with that at the time?
I mean, the government was super, super helpful. I mean,
were they good?
I would have never imagined international affairs to be so helpful. Not only, during the time when we were talking about what to do or not to do, but they were helping with the family. They were helping, giving hope on the experiences that they had before.
Do they take control of that situation? Like, do they come in and take charge?
No.
Really? So that was up to you guys and the local government.
Remember that there is a lot of very sensitive topics there. So, I mean, I think the way they managed, and there was this guy, Pacan, was the person in charge at the time. He did a phenomenal job. And I think the other part that was very helpful during all this process, as I remember the important instances that happened in this, I was at PDAC when my uncle Raul said you should talk to Steve Felder, who was a guy that used to have a company called Great Star.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to talk to him and said, listen, I have this situation. What would you do? And he said, have you spoken to the Jesuits? I said, what do you mean? Like they're priests? He said, yeah, but it was a faction of the Jesuits that actually started the ELN, was part of the theology of liberation. Same as what happened in Central America with the theology of liberation and all that sort of thing.
Wow. So there was some religious extremism or whatever
that happened at that time.
Yeah,
so
right.
I went to talk to one of the priests, and he actually was helping us on talking to these guys.
Jeez.
So we were looking to every single opportunity. But at the end, I guess the important lesson from all this was never to give up. Be strong, I mean, physically and emotionally. And then at the end, we were able to get everyone safe and sound. And even with Gernot, we elaborate the strategy to rebuild this company called Oban at the time.
Yeah.
And we took it from $100 million when we did the amalgamation of 5 companies together with John as the chairman, subsequently as a CEO, and the company being today $1.4 billion, now renamed Osisko in
Where's Gernot today?
He is with Discovery Silver.
Okay. Oh, wow. Good for him. Okay.
Oh, Gernot has, is one of those geologists that I think has not given enough credits for what he has been able to accomplish. He was the discoverer of, in a sense, Minas Nieves in Colombia with us. He was certainly a big part of the discovery of Windfall.
Yep.
He was the one that identified Garrison as an opportunity for selling. And then when he got into Discovery Metals, now they have Cordero. So it's 4 in a row. It's
unsung champion.
Yeah,
we got to get him in here. I got to hear more about this story.
You should.
That's
I don't know if he would be happy to talk about the kidnap, but I'm sure that on the discovery side of things, he will be very open to talk about it. He's I think, one of the most underrated geologists, just because he's humble in his nature, but he's exceptional as a human being, as a geologist, as a husband, as a friend.
Wow.
Someone that I have all the time.
And you still have a lot of good relationship with him.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Fantastic. So with that strategy, I guess we'll just pivot quickly. And just so listeners are aware, I recently have decided to take a stake in O3. So I'll lay that down early so that anybody listening understands that there is some bias coming from me, but I am interested in getting Jose's perspective on O3.
I appreciate your support, first of all.
Oh,
so thank you so much.
No. It's listen, it's an opportunity, and I think it's one that I think listeners should be interested in learning more about. But with O3, so you've came through this Oban, you guys went out there, you mopped up a lot of assets. When did this Alexandria? How did that play out? The Alexandria acquisition.
So interestingly enough, we decided to do this merger of all the companies in 2015. 2016, we changed the name. 2016, first asset we bought under this consolidation after Windfall was Marvin.
Yeah.
And the reason why we bought Marvin was because we thought, well, Canadian Malartic will need feed. We're buying Marvin, and we will sit there. That was under Osisko.
Right.
And no more work was done.
Like a long-term optionality
No
play.
more
Let's buy
further
Marvin
work.
and sit on it.
We just thought,
Yep.
someone's going to buy this for $200 million at some point. There's going to be money coming in. Let's do that. Then we did Garrison. Then we did Beaufield.
Mm-hmm.
And when we did the spin out in 2019 with O3, so all the assets but Windfall, the first acquisition we did was Alexandria Minerals,
Mm-hmm.
which was the eastern side of Marvin. So it's what we call Alpha. That's when Alexandria Minerals came in. And the reason why we did the spin out of O3 was because I was in charge of strategy then at Osisko, so I started looking into what else could be done. And the reality is that here at Marvin, I saw there was way more than what was explored before. It was one of these projects that people thought, well, there's a lot of drilling has been done, nothing more to be done. There is 1.5 million ounces, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Long story short, we did a lot of systematic work, same as what we did in Windfall at the time. And now we are already in 2.6 and probably keep growing.
2.6 million ounces?
Yeah, we have 70 million tons of a gram or so. So it's roughly that.
Now, Stefan, can you pull up the chart for O3? What was the market cap on that?
It's 120.
I can't read that. 123 million.
Yeah.
That's insane, right? So so let's break that down for a second. So it's 123 million bucks. You've got 2.6 million ounces, you said, and growing.
But only
roughly?
Marvin.
Yeah, only on Marvin.
Because we have over 1 million ounces in Alpha. So
in Alpha, which is
if you sum up everything, we are like short of a couple thousand ounces to 4 million ounces total.
That's crazy. Now, I want to play this video because, well, as a precursor to that, I remember I was really interested in getting Alexandria. That was one of the things I was interested in.
As gold spot?
No, not as gold spot, as with Newfound Gold.
Yeah.
Early. And around that same time. And Agnico came in. And there was actually a bidding war between you guys and Agnico on...
That's well, not
a bidding war, but
I mean we
there was a competitive kind of bid.
We bet $20 million. They came for 25, and at the time I remember speaking to my board and I said we have to bet 35, and they said like why? I said because we need to bet more than 40% premium because Agnico, because they're a very disciplined company, they would never pay
more than 30%
premium for an asset, and
Amazing.
It was exactly like that. We paid 35. They didn't came back.
Wow. Okay, that's awesome. So now let's play this clip because this is really pretty crazy, and I want to talk to you about this.
Okay, thank you. And I have to ask, have you finished with your consolidation drive in the Abitibi? Because there's a handful of other juniors with 1, 2, 3 million ounces there that would potentially fit in very nicely into your plan to utilize the spare milling capacity. Yep. You mentioned today and in your conference call about 500,000 ounces potentially of additional production. There's perhaps some other companies you could buy, some juniors you could buy that could really help shovel some more ore into that concept.
Well, that's a great question. Right now we're focused on delivering what we've already identified, which is the potential for another 300,000 ounces a year, the potential at Detour, the potential for another 200,000 to 300,000 from the ore body itself at Malartic, and then an additional 500,000 through using mill capacity. So the total number really of the optimization is closer to 1 million. And importantly, and this is key, a lot of that is without having to build a new mill, without having to build new tailings facilities, which are typically half the capex. So in a place where we already have a 2 million ounce a year of production, the Abitibi, if you can increase that by 1 million ounces at half the capital cost and double the return on capital with half the environmental footprint, this is really where you get the benefit of a consolidation. This is something that's going to take several years for us to do, but it's massive. And to your point, of course, it makes sense in the interim to see what's around, to see what's available, because yes, if there's a junior with a mine that's close by, almost certainly it makes more sense to have that gold processed at an existing facility rather than having to build a new one.
Given the complexity and difficulty of permitting new minerals and plants,
Absolutely.
having those bits of infrastructure, such an incredible advantage.
Absolutely, Paul. It's not just the return on capital, it's the risk adjusted. I mean, you have to get, it makes the permitting easier, it's a smaller environmental footprint, it's less risky, and again, it's in a really good part of the world where we have a competitive advantage.
Okay, thank you.
That's
now,
good. So that's a fascinating clip because it illuminates this exact image. So he talked about Canadian and Malartic. He talked about another 500,000 ounces coming from surrounding properties and also cutting capital expenditures possibly in half. And so if we look at this map that Stefan's pulling up here, here's where you've got a Canadian Malartic, which Stefan is circling there and highlighting. And just directly north of it, glued onto it, is literally your 2.6 million ounces at Marvin. So, oh yes, there's Wesdome, there's other players in the camp, but when I look at, okay, well, Wesdome already has, milling operations in that area, etc. So, I mean, I guess there's Probe, but that's some distance away. We already know that there was interest in Alpha from Osisko back when, although albeit it was a lesser amount, but they're still strategically interested in the land. And notwithstanding all of that, boom, you guys are sitting there with Marban. Now, when I went through the economics on Marban, it's something like it has an NPV of, I forget what the NPV was. It was
$463 million.
There you go.
5% discount rate, $1,700 gold.
Right. And then the capital expenditure was
$435 million.
Right. So it was 1.1 to 1 or 1 to 1 roughly.
That's correct.
Similar. So what happens, so I've done this with my team a little bit. We went through it, Vincent and I and Matt. And we tried to carve out the portions of the capital expenditures that would be attributed to the milling and so maybe from your words, have you guys run that type of an adjustment, or can you talk about that? What happens when you strip out the mill and the tailings and that sort of cost that would be affixed to that side, to that overall capex, and replace it with, say, trucking to something like? I'm sure you've thought about it.
Well, I'm gonna use the words that were used in the video. Capex is cut by half.
By half. So yeah, so that's what we kind of came up to as well. So
I'm not saying that we have those numbers. I'm just saying that if I take the word of this gentleman, that he seems to be like super smart by being reasonable. The president of Agnico.
Yeah, it'd be a reasonable estimate.
I imagine that they have very good numbers on that. So maybe they have run the numbers and they know it's half.
Yeah, I know. We ran it. We actually came up with something. I mean, again, guys, we don't have all the engineering information, but we generally came up with about half as well. That was what we came up with, and I actually didn't notice that he said that in the video. But it's interesting because yes, that's what I had in mind asking you the question. So I mean, same thing. We came up with about half.
Then you end up in 2-to-1, which end up being much more.
Yeah, the economics are way better.
Than when we assumed before, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the economics are way better. So, that's a huge thing for a potential investor to consider, and one of the reasons why, I think a big reason why we're making our bet. And again, another thing to consider too is that you actually have quite a bit of cash. You've got what, 16 million in cash, roughly?
Well, yes, but our cash is really composed by
cash
hard dollars, exactly, by flow-through dollars, and then investments. No, so we have two main investments that were not money that we put, but we reallocate some of our assets in better scenarios,
like Moneta.
Like Moneta, which makes more sense to have it under that scenario, because then the PEA and the prefeasibility will be much better, because we had the better grade at the beginning, but they have that longevity. But in the whole thing, it's a much better project. So that's worth around $40 million now.
40, yeah.
And then we put our properties in Cartier Resources, and we have 16% of Cartier Resources, which is another $6 million. So effectively, in those two positions, we have another $50 million plus, say, $12 million that we have in hard and equities. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I approximated around 60, like 50, 60 million bucks. Which, you strip that out of 120 million, you're left with 80 million. So now we're looking at the not only the candidacy and the locale for Agnico, and very explicit, as you've heard from Agnico CEO, that there's a lot of strategic advantage and some very short, I will say, Babe Ruth calls on additional ounces being produced out of their current facilities. And if you listen to the clip longer, he'll talk about how that's a big strategy, is that the time and length to permitting and for milling facilities, having them intact is like something that they're putting a lot more weight on, and there's a leverage to those facilities that they're looking to, I guess, again, lever into future dealings. But so I've got 50 million stripped out, so you've got an EV of 80 million roughly, let's say, and then you've got your MPV at call it 500 million, right, on your asset.
But that's a standalone.
That's as a standalone, and it's better. It'd be better with a lesser capex. So it's pretty phenomenal. So there's pretty phenomenal deep value. I mean, we could go through. There's a little bit more to that story as well, but notwithstanding the positions and the leverage that you have right now in this current gold climate to things like Moneta, which is no slouch of a project and is under good management. So yeah, really exciting thing. So did I miss anything with regards to why somebody should pay attention to 03? And I know that wasn't the purpose of today's thing, was to talk up.
Listen, it is. I don't think there is no secret here that Agnico Eagle has been very open, saying that they have a mill of 55,000 tons per day, and by 2027 they are not going to have full capacity because they are going underground.
Yep.
For obvious reasons, they're moving from 1 gram to 3 grams. So instead of needing 55, or let's say to make the argument easier, 60,000 tons per day, they're going to need like a third, which is 20.
Yep.
So they will have to fill that capacity, which is 40,000 tons. Can we start making assumptions? Probably it's not the proper thing for us as a company, and we have to look into engineering as a standalone project.
Sure.
And we will try to keep improving the standalone project. And reason to do that is that we're still working on resource and trying to expand our resources and make the project better by itself. But investors certainly have to look to different arrests on how this project can be moved along and where they could make money. And the reality is that if we think about the future of Marvin, like on our schedule, we will be in production by 2027, late 2026, which is precisely the moment where Agnico will need feed. So I think there is a lot of synergies to be made here, and we can make assumptions that we could build it by ourselves.
Sure.
Toll milling, it's not out of the table, but at some point we'll have to make the decision if we will just go fully by ourselves.
It's definitely not needed for you.
And then Agnico could do whatever they need to do if they have to do it. And my job as a CEO will be to, if something comes through my desk, will be to share it with the board and then to shareholders. And at the end, what makes us, you and I, very different is when we work for a company, we have a vested interest. We have our money there. And we have our family office money in 03. We have 6% of the company. So I don't care about, literally, I don't care about my job.
Yeah.
I believe more on how can we maximize the most amount of value here, because that 6% would represent more than what could represent my job right now.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's see. I think that 2023 will be a great year if we think about the fact that 2 years takes to get permits. So either me or them, if they need to move things along, something should be, put in at least into the equation.
Yeah, and your environmental baselines, your metallurgy, and all that good stuff is all there. It's pretty much it's all done, right?
But more important than all of those things is really one thing that we don't talk too much, and it segues into the idea of doing the right things. We are part of the solution in Marvin. Marvin was a brownfield area where there used to be a mine, where there has been areas that were not left in proper order. And we will be part of doing all that cleanup. we will be part of living a better mining area in Valdor. And we will be part of the cycle of economy. Because we have to understand that, the gold resources are not infinite. So they're finite. Then you finish with the gold. And if you finish with the gold, then where are going to be the drillers? Where are going to be the people from the hotels? Where are going to be the people from the Chamber of Commerce?
They live in town and they have real estate.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
The real estate would go down. And then, but by finding more ore and putting that into production, we will contribute into the society by keep adding jobs, by keep adding proper, not work, but I mean, proper facilities, right? Like schools, like hospitals, like being part of the solution with the different municipalities, with the municipality of Valdor, the municipality of Malartic, like working together with the federal government, working together with the First Nations, working together with the communities. Like we certainly will be part of that. And I think that in a place like Valdor, that a lot of development has happened. I mean, let's not forget, Valdor is the valley of gold for a reason. Yeah. We tend to talk about, we're in Valdor. No, it's the Valley of Gold.
No, this is Gold HQ. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So it's a great place to be from a jurisdictional standpoint of view.
Amazing. And in today's day and age where we're seeing, a lot of challenges in, South America, we're seeing a lot of challenges in Mexico, we're seeing challenges around the world in other jurisdictions. One tends to forget the value and there's a premium price that should be paid for these tier 1 jurisdictions, these places where you're in mining. Like this is insane. 112 million ounces of gold has come out of that Larder Cadillac Destor, that Larder Cadillac break, the Destor to the north, 90. So which then, goes into that Duparquet area, and then you've got Casa Berardi beyond that. So the Abitibi as a whole, 200 million ounces plus. It's
prime jurisdiction.
It's insane. It's the value of that is incredible in the real estate. And I was looking at, so Vincent and I were looking at the discovery potentials as well for O3. So some of the discovery upside in the future, what there's, the amount of area and that was one of the reasons I loved Alexandria so much, was this huge underexplored land package with so much smoke, so many values. And so you guys have been really focused on driving Marban and driving Alpha forward, but there's still tons of areas that have, that need to be checked.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's amazing. So back to this, Peru, I just wanted to sort of round it out because I know we're running probably short on time and I'm sure you got better places to be. But I wanted to dive into Peru with you a little bit, pick your brain. So is there anything in there, should we be paying attention? First of all, is Peru a good jurisdiction right now to be investing in with everything that's gone on in the last kind of year and a half?
Well, I mean, certainly you find elephants in a country of elephants, and Peru has proven right that it is the right jurisdiction to look for elephants. And I still believe that Peru is the right jurisdiction to find unicorns, in the sense that there are a lot of areas that has been explored for a certain type of deposit, but not for others. Peru was, for example, going to the 1990s, was explored for very high-grade gold and silver veins. That was very well known, like low sulfidation, intermediate sulfidation, high sulfidation, very similar to Mexico. Open pits, finding these disseminated, no. Pierina was found, Yanacocha was found, and after that, plenty of deposits. We have not yet found in Peru any telescoped porphyries. I think only one. I think Chacana had a telescope one, but I'm not sure if it's even telescoped. But the area of Huancavelica is an area where I've always been mesmerized because there's a lot of high sulfidation things. So you see all the veins and you don't see the roots of the porphyry. So maybe it has been telescoped. And I don't think no one has done really deep drilling to end up finding a very large porphyry. And in that regard, to your question, I felt at some point if you want to call it from a purpose standpoint of view, we want to do well. We want to produce gold, good gold. And being in Canada is great. But I always felt if I was born in Peru, I had to do something in Peru. So,
for sure. It's got to be calling at you.
Yeah. So I went, I joined a group and I joined a company called Silver Mountain Resources as a chairman, and as a family office, we made a significant investment in the IPO and pre-IPO, IPO, and after. we have around 4% of the company. Personally, I have another couple percent that we have invested. And we have an opportunity there to, we have already, by the way, 80 million ounces of silver. A plant is there already. There
Good
is
grade?
around 10 ounces.
Wow.
Around 10 ounces.
That's excellent.
But the beauty is this unicorn dream, where we believe that we have the opportunity to drill for these telescope porphyries. And if we can hit into that, that will be the ideal scenario where we could have like something really outstanding in Peru. To your point, how is Peru doing? We had a very difficult time on the previous election. There was the extreme, not extreme right, but center right and the extreme left. At the end, the extreme left, or Mr. Pedro Castillo, decided to do a coup d'etat, reason for why he went to jail. It was not that he tried to, he did it, and that's why he went to jail. So his vice president, which is Dina Boluarte, a woman, took power, a woman that actually speaks Quechua, and that it is from the Andes. And apparently when she chose her cabinet, the extreme left didn't like it, so they all went into weapons and tried to destroy the country in 2 days, but they couldn't. And things has been now, I think, well managed.
It's getting stable now. Everything's okay.
Now it's very stable. But one important thing that this give us as a lesson is that Peru, although with all these difficult political difficulties that we have gone through, there is one part which we have been very stable, and that's been on the economical side of things. Peru has grown at 6% since the 1993 or 4, has never stopped, and even when it came down, it was more than the countries in the region, than the other countries in the region. So in comparison, we were still doing better. And our constitution is a constitution that has not been changed since then. Of course, there is a lot of people that wants to change it, but so far has not been changed,
it's remained
which is
intact.
great.
Yep.
And there is 4 pillars in that constitution that makes Peru very unique in the sense, and why it's so stable. One, the central bank is independent. So if any extreme left comes into power, they cannot start throwing money because central bank is independent. They have to respect private property, which means that the government cannot do business. It's prohibited under the constitution. Right, with the exception of water and a specific oil company. They need to respect international treaties, and the president has to leave at the end of their mandate. With that, we could have a horrible political situation, but economically, the country will continue to work properly. So I am certainly very, very positive on Peru. I think that this is actually an opportunity because I am a long-term guy. And that's the reason why we made the investments. And the reality is, I mean, the groups that came with us at Silver Mountain on the investments were like Franklin and Merck and, very important groups that.
So it's all strategic kind of capital partners that you have involved
long term,
here. Yeah, wow. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I think the best time to invest in anything is when everybody else is afraid of it or hates it or whatever. I mean, there's opportunity there too, right?
And it's silver. I mean, it's part of the critical metals.
And it's hard to find good silver exposure.
You have the potential finding copper in the area as well.
Yeah.
80 million ounces in historical resources. Just a 43-101 announced with.
So is that all high sulfidation veining right now?
Intermediate to high.
Okay, so then you're going to try to trace that down to like the feeder systems for that.
So we did that, and we actually published a 43-101 that shows 20 million ounces of silver equivalent. I don't know the separation in terms of tons of each of the metals. So just the regulators, get out of the regulators, but it's roughly 20 million ounces, 10 coming from the historical, 10 which are new, and I think it's a great opportunity to at least study, to be studied.
And what's the market cap now? Steph, do you want to pull that up?
It's around $35 million, I believe.
Silver Mountain. We got 42 million.
Yeah,
okay.
$42 million. We have around $13 million in cash. And
what's the pullback from, you think? What's that you had a pretty heavy pullback from 36 down to
I don't know.
was that just like general sentiment in the space or just drift?
Yeah, I guess so.
There was no like news that came out that everyone was unhappy about, kind of thing.
Well, maybe
or?
they weren't happy with 20 million ounces of silver, but I mean, 20 million ounces of silver.
Oh, you publish your resource.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
But that's 10
be
years.
expected.
That's 10 years of 2 million ounces. So, I mean,
Yeah. Well, I know it's it's hard. They're hardly ever like that's a good one, but you hardly ever see any of them come out, and then the stocks go up as a result of them. So yeah, that's crazy. Okay, so that's,
it's good opportunity in the sense that a lot of work has been done since 2 years ago.
yeah.
A lot of work has been done since the IPO when we raised $25 million at 50 cents. This is 20 cents right now.
Yeah.
So all that money just came in already. It's already in the ground. And this can be in production by the end of 2024.
Amazing. That's
So
cool.
It's a good opportunity.
Well, I'd love to dive deeper into it, and have a deeper look at that. So maybe we can do that another time.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That'd be a lot of fun to get you in on that.
I'll bring a bunch of pictures so your audience can benefit from that.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, awesome. Well, listen, Jose, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been great. It's
know.
been fantastic. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good long one. We'll have it out there and should be posted probably next week, Steph, I think. Okay, so usually about a week delayed,
I
but
hope your audience benefited from a good talk of a couple of friends and keep moving.
if not, at least I benefited.
Oh, we had a great hour
of
of time.
a
Yeah.
good chat. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks again.
Phenomenal.
Thanks for coming in, man.
Thank you so much.
All right.
It's
Well,
great.
that's it. Wrapping it up.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.